Hello, my name is Ilona, and in this video I want to talk a little bit more about the inner child healing. It's very important to understand that I'm not here blaming the parents for everything. This isn't about that. It's not that if your parents still alive, you're gonna knock on their door and tell them how horrible they were, they should have supported you in this way. This is about energetically cleansing yourself. So dealing with your baggage, dealing with your shadow, that is something you are responsible for now. So do it energetically. You can do that by writing letters to your parents, if they're dead or not, doesn't matter, and burning the letters. Very important that you express yourself as thoroughly as possible. Feel your anger, feel your pain, feel your fear, your anxiety. It's so important. You can keep writing until it feels neutral to you. That can take some time. You can also visualize your parents. Maybe you want to really get angry with them, just yell at them. Just do that energetically and understand that this is energetically. Or even express fear or sadness or just what you've missed. It's very important to clean that up. It needs to heal, and you can only heal that by thoroughly feeling that and expressing that emotion. So this is not about actually going to your parents if they're still alive, or your grandparents or whoever, and just dropping it onto them like, well, this is your fault, you're to blame, and then leave it at that. No, this is now your responsibility to clean up. But it's important that we express this. I've noticed in some reactions that some people were like, you need to forgive your parents, you need to love them, understand that they didn't do anything wrong, they didn't know any better. I fully understand that. But don't bypass, because that's spiritual bypassing. You need to deal with your shadow, with that pain and with that anger. So that child that you still carry in you, your inner child, is not going to be helped by telling the inner child, you're not supposed to be angry anymore. Just shut up and forgive your parents and just get over it. Because that's what you're telling that child. You will feel, once you transformed the anger, the fear, the pain, that you're going to be very neutral towards your parents or your family members or anyone that raised you. You're going to be very neutral, and that's where you want to go to. And then you can decide how you want to deal with them. And pretty much if you're neutral, if you've transformed it, then you pretty much already forgiven your parents or yourself or family members that raised you, or anyone else for that matter. So it's very important to look at that shadow. Don't step over it way too easily. I've already mentioned that in my video, but I've noticed that there were some people reacting towards that. I understand that ultimately you want to get in the position that you're not triggered anymore and you can really step away. And if you really feel like I have to step away because this is the best for me, please do so. I actually, in a consultation, someone mentioned that they saw something from a therapist that actually said, no, you need a good relationship with your mother or with your father, especially when they're still alive. If it doesn't feel right to you, don't do that. If some mothers, some fathers, some people that have raised you are still in a very toxic mindset, it doesn't feel right to you, you can't keep your energy high around them, well, don't surround yourself with them. If it doesn't feel right to you anymore, just clear up everything and just let go. You really don't have to be around people that are hurtful to you or disrespectful or just horrible to you. You don't have to do that. That's not good in any way for your inner child. It isn't good for yourself and your mindset and your energy. It isn't good. So cleanse yourself and then see what happens. Sometimes the relationship with your father or your mother or your parents, if they're still alive, will change for the better because you've taken away the expectations that they're supposed to do something. Like deep down inside, the inner child, especially if the inner child hasn't had enough attention, enough understanding, or enough support, is still asking for that support, is still asking for that recognition, and they can still try to get it from their parents. And when you start transforming that, when you start become the parent for your own inner child, you won't need to get that from your parents, and it will change the dynamic. And sometimes it will change for the better, and then you will have a better relationship with your parents. It's very possible. But if it doesn't, and if they maybe even start to guilt you into things, or start still doing horrible things to you, or just toxic behavior, step away from them. You are responsible for your inner child. You are responsible for your energy. So just step away from that. I also want to mention the black sheep of the family. I think I've mentioned it in the video. I'm not sure. But the black sheep is most of the time, pretty much all of the time, the person that is expressing all the negative energy in a family. So when there's a black sheep in the family and the family looks picture perfect on the outside, I know that there's something else going on in that family. And they always mention that, well, it's just a bad apple. And, they had this theory that they were just born that way. But if you truly look at things, the black sheep kind of shows what's going wrong. So if there's not enough emotional support, if there's emotional neglect, which is very important to understand. You can really be emotional neglected. You've gotten everything you needed on a material level, but nobody was there to really listen to you. Nobody was there to handle your feelings or help you along with all these emotions or how to deal with life. So you can feel unsupported. You cannot feel like someone understands you or recognizing you, and that stays with you. Now, some people start throwing that outside, projecting everything outside. So they get angry, they get frustrated, thrown out of schools, always getting into trouble, maybe even addictions. That's usually a sign something's not right in the family, because the child did not get the support they needed to deal with life in a better way. So they kind of just numbing themselves and self-medicating. Then of course you have also a way that, how do you say that, they don't project it outside, they project it inside. So you could get depressions, also addictions, but more of self-harming, all kinds of anxieties. It's really turned inward. So the person doesn't throw it outside, but really hurts themselves all the time, pretty much. So it's very important. Black sheep, most may even recognize that. I was the black sheep of the family, so obviously everything was wrong was because of me. That's pretty much was it. And it's very, very sad, but my parents just didn't know how to deal with me. And I just want to just tell a little bit about my background. I'm born in a family where the women were not supposed to open their mouths, pretty much. From both sides of my families, the women were just supposed to follow the men. They were the dominant ones. They were allowed to be angry. They were allowed to be sharp with their mouths. They were allowed to speak up. But the women really weren't. My mother, when growing up, I barely even know that she was there. So it was really sad. She was kind of just following everything that was supposed to be. She did everything she was supposed to do. And I've never seen her angry. Still to this day, my mother cannot get angry, which is very, very sad. But when I was born, I have an older brother, and my older brother has the character of my mother. So he's more, at least growing up, was more shy, quiet. He's now a little different, but when he was growing up, he kind of fitted the mold. He just kept quiet, just did what was asked. Then I was born, and I have the character more of my father. So you can just imagine that was an issue. I could get very angry, my mother told me. I don't even remember that I was, because suddenly, I think I was like 11, 12, I kind of turned depressed. I turned inward. So I kind of just closed off. I could still be very sarcastic. I've mentioned this before. I have a very sharp tongue. And I kind of just suppressed that part because it wasn't accepted. And my mother really treated me like I was a big burden by acting like that, because obviously she cannot get angry herself, so she had no idea how to handle my anger. And she always made me feel like there was something wrong with me. I wasn't supposed to act like that. And of course, my father, well, that was like unheard of that I was acting like that. So I had clashes with him when I was young. I had clashes with my uncle. I was brought up on a farm from my uncle, and my parents moved in, and later on they actually bought the farm. But that's a completely different story. So I was actually getting angry for my mother because I just was horrified by how she was treated. And my mother got angry at me for doing that. So there's a time that I just stopped doing that. I kind of just shut down, and it's a lot of more issues started. And like I said, I was the black sheep. It was of course all my fault. And so every time when I hear about someone who is the black sheep, then I'm like, yeah, there was something going on in that family. Something wasn't right there, or the person didn't get what they really needed, and that's why they got completely out of control. And if you look back at the education system, especially when I was growing up, we were really told to shut up, do what we were told. So anyone that was different or didn't fit in there was pretty much the black sheep or the outcast. So if you've been the black sheep, maybe you still are the black sheep of the family, look at yourself in a different way. I've heard in some readings I've done that people can really, I was horrible. They were right. I was acting out. I was doing this and I was doing all these awful things. There was a reason you were doing that. The reason was because your parents at that time didn't know how to handle you. They didn't know how to handle maybe your sensitive nature. Maybe they weren't prepared for anything at all. In my case, my parents had no idea how to handle with emotions or feelings. They were just workers. They would work and just suppress anything. So if you're not, how do you say this? When you're especially very sensitive, you need a different approach. So look at yourself in a mild way. Don't throw yourself like in that corner. Well, I was difficult. I was horrible. You're not. You're a child. Unfortunately, your parents were supposed to take responsibility of you. They have that background. But if you want to work with that, I'd really visualize your parents or write letters towards your parents and just be really angry. You missed something, or be very sad or very fearful about what's happening. Maybe your parents were angry or doing all kinds of things when you were speaking up, or when you were very scared, maybe when you were crying. My father couldn't handle crying. He got very angry when we would be crying. So you can get the message there's something wrong with crying. So you can all write that down and then feel through it. It's very important to feel through all these emotions that come up, and just burn letters, or even if you're visualizing them, to work through them. So I want to mention that as well. And it's something that's maybe more for the women, although I'm sure there are men as well. I just want to mention, because I've been, the last weeks, I've been really experiencing this anger. I kind of shut it down, but I have this volcano in me. And maybe a lot of women, could also be men, were not allowed to express that. So maybe you've suppressed that as well. I've tried to look in different ways when something happens or something comes up or triggered. I do have a tendency to analyze things, to start feeling through things. But I've kind of lost touch, especially because I wasn't allowed to get very angry, with that anger. So to cope and deal with that, especially in the period when I just shut down, I start analyzing it before I start feeling it. But I've noticed lately that I can really get very angry because that's still in my system. That's probably why I emphasize the anger in the inner child part, because that's important for myself to express that, to deal with that, and to really also accept that I do have that sharpness to me. I don't have to, hide that, or hide that effect that I have an opinion, and I can really, I sometimes have a sharp tongue. I do have that. I've mentioned that I have this pleasing ability, that I want to please people, but I also have that rebel, the fact that I just push everything away. I'm sarcastic, And I really need to transform it now in a better way, in a better suitable. But lately, I've had a few things happening to me that really brought me back with that anger, that frustration that I probably felt when I was very young, but I wasn't allowed to express. And that's most likely now with the energy that's going on, we are being triggered, especially in those parts that kind of been suppressed. So I've had an issue with an account on Facebook that pretended to be me, and I got very frustrated. I got so angry with that because I couldn't do anything about it. We had lots of people reported it, but this account was very smart. Well, smart, I'm not sure if that was the case, but I have a page, warekracht, and I have a personal account. But they actually got the picture from my page. And they made an account and they pretty much named it the same name, except a few for warekracht. They called it warekracht, which means they just took 2 R's and at the end 2 T's. But they made a personal account. So as people started reporting this as, hey, they're trying to impersonate this person. But Facebook would compare it to my personal account because you couldn't put in my page. So every time I got the same message, yeah, well, we have checked, but there's nothing wrong. This person is not impersonating you. It was just so frustrating. And I got so angry about that. And it's just that powerlessness, which I experienced when I was younger. I remember just being at a family meeting and everyone was just talking all this superficial blah, blah, blah. And it just made me so angry. No one was saying what was really going on. And I couldn't express it. I couldn't really say what was going on. I could just feel that, how do you say that? That powerless feeling that there was nothing I could do about it. And that came back with that account. Obviously, I put a reaction on my page that it wasn't me. I was not sending this. And so don't react to it, just block it. And it was pretty much a mess, and it took about 3-4 days before it calmed down for me. I believe it's still there, I don't know, but I got messages from people sending me chats like, hey, this person, is that you? It was just frustrating and making me so angry. And it was interesting because not only did things like that happen, like I really get in touch with that anger, but I also noticed when I've expressed it towards people around me, that most people were pretty much acting like my mother when I was younger. They really couldn't handle it, so they got a little fearful. So not only was I really in that powerless position of a child, but I also noticed with the reaction from my surroundings that really they didn't want to, or they thought that I was being very disrespectful towards them. It wasn't even towards them. So it was like, I'm angry about this and this and this. It has nothing to do with you. But the anger, they couldn't handle that. So that was very interesting. So to me, that's something I really need to work on, of course, because deep down inside, when you see something like that mirrored, it means that I cannot handle my own anger. I've been repressing this. Of course, it's being taught to me, but still, I'm the one still doing it. If I really feel that power that's behind that, of course, now there's still all this pain attached to it. That's why when it comes out very raw. But when I get more and more in touch with that anger, I get in touch with the strength that's underneath it. And the better I can deal with that, the more constructive it will come out. It won't be so devastating when it comes out, but it's been repressed for all this time. And I will draw in, if I can fully embrace that part of me, I will draw in people that can handle this. They won't have a problem if I do sometimes get a bit sharp, not even towards them, but just if I'm frustrated about something, they will just, like, okay, that's something she's dealing with, and they won't see it as something threatening them. Unfortunately, my mother did see that as threatening because she couldn't handle her anger. And like I've said, she still doesn't get angry. So it's interesting. It's an interesting process. So I just wanted to mention that as well, and I hope that will help people to understand what this process is. What is shadow work? It's really about accepting every part of yourself, taking responsibility for that, and now dealing with that. And if you really completely embrace everything, you'll see that around you. That's how we manifest this new world we all want. Let's face it, we're all longing for it, but it's about our perceptive. If we change that, if we deal with ourselves, if we stand in our authority, we will see it around us. And I want to leave it at that, and I hope to see you in another video. Bye.